The sun was hiding behind the buildings of Brooklyn when Mark Thompson pulled his black Civic into the driveway. The day had been exhausting at the law firm, but nothing could prepare him for what he was about to find at home. "Gabriel? Gabriel, where are you?" His voice echoed through the empty house. A muffled sob came from the backyard. Mark followed the sound, his heart sinking. His 6-year-old son was kneeling beside the trash can, his small dirty hands desperately sifting through garbage. "Son, what are you doing?" Gabriel looked up, his face wet with tears, his green eyes, just like his mother's, overflowing with anguish. "Dad, she threw them away. She threw away Grandma Mary's letters." The words came out in broken sobs. "And my drawing, the drawing I made of Mom." Mark knelt beside his son, ignoring the dirt that was staining his dress pants. "Calm down, son. What letters?" "The letters Grandma wrote to me before she... Gabriel couldn't finish. "She said not to let anyone throw them away. She said they were important, and she said not to let the mean lady switch my medicine." A chill ran down Mark's spine. The mean lady? Gabriel always referred to Patricia that way when he thought no one was listening. "Gabriel, honey, let's go inside and..." "What is going on out here?" The icy voice cut through the air like a blade. Patricia stood in the kitchen doorway, her perfectly styled blonde hair contrasting with her irritated expression. She was wearing a pristine white dress, as always, but her blue eyes held something Mark had never noticed before, something predatory. "Patricia, it seems like you threw some of Gabriel's important things into the old trash, Mark." She walked down the steps with calculated steps. "Yellowed letters from a dead woman and childish scribbles. The boy needs to move on from his grief." Gabriel instinctively cowered behind his father, like a small animal before a predator. "But Grandma said..." "Your grandma is dead, Gabriel." Patricia's voice rose an octave. "She's been dead for 3 months. You need to stop with these fantasies." Mark felt the tension in his son's tiny body. Gabriel was trembling, but not from the cold. I wasn't fantasizing," the boy whispered. "Grandma said to be careful with the medicine. She said the mean lady was switching it." "That's enough." Patricia clapped her hands, making Gabriel jump. "Mark, you need to take this boy to a psychologist. These hallucinations are getting concerning." But Mark was watching his son's face. Gabriel wasn't lying. He knew that look. It was the same one Julia had when she knew something important. "Let's go inside," Mark said, picking Gabriel up. "We'll talk about this later." As they walked inside, Mark didn't see the cold smile that formed on Patricia's lips. But Gabriel did, and it made him tremble even more. The early hours of the morning found Mark awake, watching Gabriel sleep. The boy was restlessly turning, mumbling disconnected words about medicine and the mean lady. Mark went silently down to the kitchen. The trash can was empty. Patricia had taken the bag outside, but on the grass, some fragments of paper still resisted the night wind. Using his cell phone as a flashlight, Mark began to pick up the pieces. Yellowed paper, a shaky, elderly handwriting. Some words were legible. "Gabriel, careful, medication, can't sleep." Mark almost dropped the papers. Patricia was standing in the doorway, wrapped in a white silk robe. "Just needed a glass of water." She approached, her blue eyes shining in the dim light. "I hope you're not feeding the boy's sick fantasies." "Sick? Mark, honey." Her voice was sugary, but there was steel beneath it. "Gabriel is clearly traumatized by the death of his mother and grandmother. He's creating imaginary enemies to deal with the pain." Mark put the fragments into his pajama pocket. "What if they're not fantasies?" Patricia's smile wavered for a split second. "What do you mean?" "Mary was lucid until the end. Everyone knew that. If she said something to Gabriel, she died of a heart attack, Mark. She was 78. It happens." Patricia moved closer, placing her hand on his chest. "You're hurting me with these insinuations." "I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just..." "Dad?" Gabriel's small voice echoed from the hallway. Gabriel appeared in his pajamas, holding his worn teddy bear. When he saw Patricia, he stopped immediately, as if he had run into an invisible wall. "What is it, son?" I had a bad dream." Gabriel didn't take his eyes off Patricia. "I dreamed that Grandma was trying to warn me about something." "Nightmares are normal after a loss," Patricia said, but her voice sounded forced. "Maybe you need some medicine to sleep better." "No!" Gabriel's scream echoed through the house. "I don't want medicine. Grandma said not to take it." Mark saw something that made him freeze. For a moment, an expression of pure fury crossed Patricia's face. It only lasted a second, but it was long enough. "Gabriel, come here." Mark held out his arms. "Let's go back to bed." As they went up the stairs, Mark felt Patricia's eyes boring into his back. And for the first time in 2 years of marriage, he felt fear. Fear of his own wife. The next day, Mark waited for Patricia to leave for work. She claimed to be on shift at the private hospital where she supposedly worked. Gabriel was at school, and Mark had a few hours. He went back to the yard with renewed determination. If there were more fragments of Mary's letters, he would find them. After an hour of meticulous searching, he had a small pile of paper scraps. Some were from the letters, others seemed to be from children's drawings. At the kitchen table, he began to assemble the most important puzzle of his life. The first letter he managed to partially reconstruct left his hands trembling. "My dearest Gabriel, your grandma doesn't have much time. Patricia is not... Be careful with the medicine. She's switching it for flour in the capsules. Your father needs to know." Mark sat down heavily in the chair. Flour. What the hell did Mary mean? He continued to put the fragments together. A drawing by Gabriel began to take shape. Childish scribbles, but disturbingly accurate. A woman with long hair falling down a staircase. Julia. His wife had died exactly like that, in a seemingly accidental fall down the stairs at home when Gabriel was 5. But in the drawing, there was a figure at the top of the stairs. A blonde woman watching. "Oh my God," Mark whispered. His cell phone rang, making him jump. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Thompson? This is Sergeant Miller, a private detective. I was hired by Mrs. Mary Thompson before she passed away." Mark's heart pounded. "Hired for what?" "To investigate your wife, Patricia Miller. Sir, you are in danger, and so is your son." Mark looked at the fragments scattered on the table, pieces of a truth he was only beginning to understand. "We need to talk in person," Sergeant Miller continued. "Today, I have information that will change everything you think you know about your wife." "Where?" "The coffee shop on the corner of your street in 1 hour. And sir, don't tell Patricia about this call." The call ended, leaving Mark alone with the paper fragments and a terrible certainty growing in his chest. His wife was not who she pretended to be, and Gabriel had always known it. The Corner Perk Cafe was almost empty on a Tuesday afternoon. Mark recognized Sergeant Miller immediately, a burly man in his 50s with the sharp eyes of someone accustomed to seeing through lies. "Mr. Thompson." The sergeant stood up, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." They sat at a back table, far from curious ears. The sergeant opened a brown folder, taking a sealed envelope from it. "Mrs. Thompson gave me this a week before she died. She said if anything happened to her, I should give it to you." Mark opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were 3 handwritten letters in Mary's unmistakable script and copies of documents. The first letter began, "My dearest Mark, if you are reading this, it's because my worst fears have come true." Mark read in silence, feeling the world collapse around him. Mary had discovered that Patricia was replacing Julia's medication. Insulin with a flour placebo. Julia was diabetic, dependent on the medication to survive. Julia began to suspect, the letter said. She wanted to change doctors, get new tests. That's when the fall happened. But I saw her, Mark. I saw Patricia at the top of the stairs that night. "That's impossible," Mark murmured. "Patricia didn't even know Julia back then." "Read the second letter," the sergeant said gravely. The second revelation was even more shocking. Patricia had worked as Julia's private nurse for months before her death, using fake documents. She had approached the family with a meticulous plan. "She came to me afterward," Mary's letter continued. "She offered her services to take care of me. She said I was sick, that I needed special medication. I started taking the pills she brought." Mark swallowed hard. "But I began to suspect when Gabriel got sick. His allergies were getting worse even though he was taking his medication. Then I found out she was giving him colored candies instead of his allergy pills." "Mary investigated on her own," Sergeant Miller explained. "She saved some of the medication Patricia gave her. I had it analyzed in a lab." The sergeant slid a lab report across the table. "Vitamin C. Your mother-in-law was taking vitamin C instead of her heart medication. She killed Mary. Technically, the heart attack was real, but it was induced by the lack of proper medication." Mark read the third letter, and his vision darkened. "Mark, Patricia is not who she says she is. I investigated her past. 3 previous husbands, all dead under suspicious circumstances. All left her fortunes. And all had small children." Mark's hands were trembling so much he could barely hold the paper. "The children also died, Mark. Always a few months after their fathers. Always under Patricia's medical care." "How many?" Mark's voice was just a whisper. 7 children in the last 10 years, Sergeant Miller replied. "All between 4 and 8 years old." Mark thought of Gabriel. his 6-year-old son, and felt nauseous. "She's planning to kill my son." "She's already started," the sergeant confirmed. "The candies instead of the medicine are just the first step. She needs Gabriel to get sick enough to justify more drastic medical interventions." Mark folded the letters carefully, his face a mask of determination. "What do we need to do?" "We need concrete evidence, and we need to protect Gabriel." The sergeant leaned forward. "But Mr. Thompson, she can't suspect we know. If Patricia realizes we've found out, she might speed up her plans." "How much time do we have?" "Not much. Mary found out that Patricia was already researching more efficient methods, and yesterday she had a consultation at a fertility clinic." Mark frowned. "She wants to get pregnant?" "No, sir. She wants to pretend to be pregnant. It's always the same. She fakes a pregnancy, kills the husband and child, and then claims to have lost the baby due to the trauma. She gains sympathy, inherits everything, and disappears." Mark closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the truth. His wife was a serial killer, and Gabriel was next on her list. Mark arrived home with his heart pounding in his chest. Mary's letters were burning in the inside pocket of his jacket, and every shadow seemed to hide danger. "Dad!" Gabriel ran to him as soon as he opened the door. The boy looked pale, with dark circles under his eyes he shouldn't have at 6. "How was school, champ?" "Aunt Patricia made a special snack for me," Gabriel whispered, looking nervously toward the kitchen. "But I didn't want to eat much of it. It tasted weird." Mark felt his blood run cold. "What kind of taste?" "Bitter. And she said it was because of the new medicines she mixed in." "Gabriel!" Patricia's voice echoed from the kitchen. "Come take your medication." Gabriel shrank against his father. "I don't want to, Dad. Please." Mark made a quick decision. "Go on, son, but don't swallow it yet, okay? Just hold it in your mouth until I get there." Gabriel nodded, trusting his father, even without understanding. In the kitchen, Patricia had a radiant smile, holding a glass of water and 2 colored pills. "You're just in time, honey," she said, kissing Mark on the cheek. Gabriel was having another allergic episode. "These new medications will help a lot." Mark watched Gabriel take the pills. The boy looked at him meaningfully, and Mark nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'll take Gabriel to brush his teeth," Mark said, "but he just took his medicine." "Just to get rid of the bitter taste," Mark improvised. In the bathroom, Gabriel spit the pills into his father's hand. Mark wrapped them in a piece of toilet paper and put them in his pocket. "You did the right thing, son." "Well done." But when they went downstairs, Patricia was waiting with another medication. "Gabriel forgot his allergy medicine," she said, offering a pink liquid on a spoon. "But he already took his medicine." "This one is different, Mark. It's to prevent more serious attacks." Gabriel looked at his father with pleading eyes. "Actually," Mark said, "I think we should take Gabriel to the doctor. He doesn't look well." "It's not necessary." Patricia's voice hardened slightly. "I'm a nurse, remember? I know exactly what he needs. Even so, I prefer a second opinion." Patricia held Mark's arm tightly enough to leave marks. "Mark, are you questioning my professional competence?" "I'm exercising my responsibility as a father." Patricia's blue eyes gleamed with something dangerous. "All right," she said finally, releasing him, "but take this medication in case Gabriel has an attack on the way." She handed him a small vial with a clear liquid. "It's for emergencies. 2 drops on his tongue if he starts to feel bad." Mark took the vial, knowing he would never use it. "Thank you, we'll be back soon." "Be careful," Patricia said, but there was a veiled threat in her voice. "Accidents can happen when we leave our routine." In the car, Gabriel finally relaxed. "Dad, the mean lady was lying. I wasn't feeling bad." "I know, son, I know." Mark drove straight to the hospital, the pills and the vial burning in his pocket, like evidence of a terrible truth. His wife was trying to poison his son, and he had the proof. Dr. David Rodriguez was a friend of Mark's since college. When he saw him arrive at the emergency room with Gabriel and a desperate expression, he didn't ask questions. He just led them to a private room. "David, I need you to analyze this medication. It's urgent." Mark handed the pills and the vial to the doctor. "Gabriel, do you mind if I run some tests? Just to make sure everything is okay." Gabriel nodded, trusting the doctor's gentle tone. 2 hours later, David returned with the results, his face grim. "Mark, sit down." "Gabriel, how about you draw something while I talk to your dad?" After Gabriel was distracted with paper and crayons, David whispered, "The pills are pressed sugar candies. They have no active ingredients. And the liquid? It's water with food coloring and a mild sedative. Not lethal, but enough to make a child drowsy and disoriented." Mark clenched his fists. "And Gabriel's tests?" "Mark," David hesitated. Gabriel shows signs of multiple untreated allergic crises in recent months. The histamine level in his blood indicates prolonged exposure to allergens without proper medication. In other words, someone has been deliberately denying appropriate medical treatment to your son. Mark looked at Gabriel, who was drawing intently. On the paper, a house with 3 figures, a tall man, a small boy, and a blonde woman with pointy teeth. David, is there any way for you to officially document that Gabriel was being medicated with placebos? I can write a full report. Mark, you need to tell me what's going on. Mark looked around, making sure they were alone. My wife is trying to kill my son. The doctor's eyes widened. I know how this sounds, but I have proof. And it's not the first time she's done this. Mark quickly told him about Mary's letters, Sergeant Miller's investigation, and the discovery about Patricia's previous husbands. My God, David murmured. Mark, you need to go to the police. Now. I'm already working with a detective, but we need more evidence before we act. What if she tries something more drastic? Mark looked at Gabriel again. The boy had drawn an additional figure on the paper, an elderly lady smiling from a cloud. Grandma Mary, Gabriel said, noticing his father's gaze. She still takes care of me even from heaven. Tears burned Mark's eyes. Gabriel, tell me something. Has Aunt Patricia ever offered you other medicine? Besides these? Gabriel nodded gravely. She said maybe I need a special shot, to get strong like the other boys. Mark and David exchanged alarmed glances. When did she say that? Yesterday. She said if I don't get better soon, she's going to have to take me to a special place, a place where her doctors can help me better. Mark felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Gabriel, listen carefully. You're not going anywhere with Aunt Patricia, got it? Or taking any shots. I know, Dad. Grandma Mary said you would protect me. David placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. You can't go home tonight. Why not? Because if she's already talking about special places and shots, it means she's losing patience. Serial killers like her tend to speed up their plans when they feel pressured. Mark looked at his watch. It was 7 o'clock. Patricia had certainly already noticed their delay. His cell phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. Answer it, David whispered, but put it on speaker. Hello? Mark, honey, where are you? I'm getting worried. Patricia's voice sounded sweet, but there was tension underneath. Still at the hospital. Gabriel's getting some extra tests. What kind of tests? Nothing much, just to be sure. Mark, it wasn't necessary. I could have taken care of him at home. I know, sweetie, but you know how I get nervous. Well, I have a surprise for you when you get back. I made a special dinner for Gabriel. Mark swallowed hard. What kind of surprise? You'll see. Oh, and Mark, don't be too long. Special dinners shouldn't get cold. The call ended, leaving a heavy silence in the room. She's going to try it tonight, David said with certainty. Mark picked Gabriel up. Son, how about we spend the night at Uncle David's house? Gabriel smiled for the first time in days. Can we? What about Aunt Patricia? Aunt Patricia will understand. But Mark knew Patricia would understand perfectly, and that would make her even more dangerous. The next morning, Mark's cell phone rang while Gabriel was still sleeping in the guest room at David's house. Sergeant Miller? Mr. Thompson, we have important developments. I was able to intercept some of Patricia's communications. What kind of communications? She's working with a doctor named Dr. Paul Williams. He falsifies death certificates and cause of death reports. Mark sat on the edge of the bed, trying not to wake Gabriel. And there's more, the sergeant continued. Last night she made 3 calls, one to Dr. Williams, another to a veterinary clinic buying potassium chloride, and a third to a real estate agency in the Hamptons. Potassium chloride? Lethal substance in high doses. It mimics a heart attack and it's almost undetectable in poorly performed autopsies. And the real estate agency? She rented an isolated cottage for this weekend. She said she wanted to do a special surprise for the family. Mark felt a chill. Sergeant, she's going to try to kill us this weekend. It seems so, but Mr. Thompson, this could be our opportunity. What do you mean? The police department is interested in the case. If we can catch Patricia and Dr. Williams in the act, we'll have irrefutable evidence to convict them. You're suggesting I use my son as bait? No. I'm suggesting we use Gabriel as the element that will help put a serial killer in jail. Mark looked at Gabriel sleeping, so small and helpless. What kind of protection can you offer? Complete. Microphones, GPS, support team. Gabriel will never truly be in danger. And what if something goes wrong? Mr. Thompson, if we don't act now, she'll try again. And next time, we might not be able to protect Gabriel. Mark thought of Mary's letters, the 7 dead children, the predatory expression in Patricia's blue eyes. What do we need to do? First, you and Gabriel need to go home today. Patricia can't suspect we've found out about her plans. And then, she'll propose the weekend at the cottage. You accept, show enthusiasm. Let her believe she's in control. This is crazy. It's the only way to end this. Mr. Thompson, Patricia has already killed at least 8 people. If she gets away now, she'll continue to kill. Mark took a deep breath. And Gabriel? How do I explain this to him? The truth, adapted for his age. Gabriel is smart. He'll understand he's helping to catch the mean lady. When Mark told Gabriel about the plan, the boy's reaction surprised him. I want to help, Dad. Grandma Mary said I would be brave like you. Son, are you sure? It's going to be scary. I'm already scared every day. At least now I know you're protecting me. Mark hugged his son, feeling a mixture of pride and terror. All right, but you do exactly what I say, okay? Okay, Dad. 2 hours later, they were back at the house in Brooklyn. Patricia greeted them with a radiant smile. I'm so glad you're back. How was the hospital? Everything's normal, Mark lied. Gabriel was just a little dehydrated. What a relief. Patricia kissed Gabriel on the forehead, and Mark saw the boy force himself not to pull away. I have a surprise for you. What kind of surprise? I rented a wonderful cottage in the Hamptons for this weekend. I thought it would be good for Gabriel to breathe some fresh air, play in nature. That's a great idea, Mark said, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. And there's more. Patricia smiled mysteriously. I have some special news to tell you there. What news? Patricia placed her hand on her flat belly. Mark, honey, I'm pregnant. Mark felt as if the ground had opened up beneath him. She was following the pattern Sergeant Miller had described exactly. That's wonderful, he managed to say. That's why I want this weekend to be special. Just the 3 of us. And our baby. Gabriel looked at his father with scared eyes but didn't say anything. When do we leave? Mark asked. Tomorrow morning. Everything is already organized. That night, while Patricia slept, Mark received a message from Sergeant Miller. Team is in position. Gabriel will have a child's bulletproof vest disguised as a life jacket. Microphones on both of you. Trackable GPS. We'll be less than 5 minutes away. Mark replied. What if she finds out? She won't. And Mr. Thompson, she's planned everything to look like an accident. You're going to drown in the cottage pool. But when she tries, we'll storm in. Mark looked out the window, watching the stars twinkle in the dark sky. Tomorrow would be the most dangerous day of their lives, but it would also be the last day of freedom for Patricia Miller. The cottage in the Hamptons was exactly as Mark had imagined, isolated, surrounded by dense woods, with only one access road, perfect for hiding screams. What a beautiful place, Patricia said, breathing in the morning air deeply. So isolated. No one will bother us here. Gabriel held his father's hand tightly. The life jacket actually disguised ballistic protection, snug on his thin body. Can I play in the pool, Dad? Of course, son, but only after I'm with you, okay? Actually, Patricia interrupted, how about we rest for a bit first? The trip was long. Mark watched her blue eyes, looking for signs that she suspected something. But Patricia seemed relaxed, almost eager. Dr. Williams should be arriving any minute, she said casually, checking her phone. Dr. Williams? Remember? My colleague from the hospital. He wanted to meet you. Mark felt his blood run cold. Sergeant Miller had mentioned Dr. Williams was involved, but Mark had hoped to have more time before the confrontation. Oh, good, he managed to say. 20 minutes later, a white Corolla parked at the entrance. Doctor. Paul Williams was a short, bald man with thick glasses and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mark, finally! He shook Mark's hand with excessive force. And this must be Gabriel. Gabriel hid behind his father, his child's instinct detecting danger. He's shy, Mark said. Children have an interesting sixth sense, Dr. Williams commented, exchanging a meaningful look with Patricia. Sometimes they know things they don't even understand themselves. During lunch, Patricia was unusually animated, talking about the baby and plans for the future, but Mark noticed she barely touched her food. Gabriel, honey, she said suddenly, you don't look well. Do you have a stomachache? No, I think you do, Patricia insisted. You're pale. Dr. Williams, can you take a look at him? Dr. Williams approached Gabriel with a stethoscope. Fast heart rate. Could be an allergic attack. It's not, Gabriel said firmly. I feel fine. A child doesn't know when they're sick, Dr. Williams declared. I'll get some medication from the car. Mark felt the critical moment was approaching. Actually, Patricia said, getting up, how about we relax by the pool? The fresh air will do Gabriel good. By the pool area, Patricia and Dr. Williams positioned themselves strategically. Mark realized they had chosen a location with no easy exit. "Gabriel, why don't you get in the water?" Patricia suggested. "It's warm. I want Dad to come in with me." "Of course," Mark said, but Patricia held him by the arm. "Honey, I need to talk to you first. It's about our family, our future." Mark saw Dr. Williams approach Gabriel with a syringe. "Gabriel," Dr. Williams said in a sugary voice, "this will make you feel better." Gabriel looked at his father with pleading eyes. "Dad?" It was then that Mark made the most difficult decision of his life. "Gabriel, do you trust me?" "Yes, Dad." "Then pretend you're feeling bad. Pretend the shot worked." Patricia frowned. "Mark, what are you—" "Gabriel, now!" Gabriel understood immediately. He began to sway, bringing his hand to his forehead. I feel dizzy." Dr. Williams smiled, satisfied. "Perfect. Now let's take him to the pool." But as they approached the water, something unexpected happened. Patricia suddenly dropped the pretense. "You know what, Mark?" Her voice was different, cold, calculating. "I'm tired of pretending." "Pretending what?" "That I like you. That I like this annoying little brat. That I want a happy family." Dr. Williams laughed. "She always does this in the end. Lets the mask slip." 9 families, Mark," Patricia said casually. 9 husbands, 7 children, all killed by my hands. Gabriel was no longer pretending to be sick. He was genuinely terrified. "Why are you telling me this?" Mark asked. "Because you're going to die anyway. Accidental drowning. A heroic father trying to save his son, but both end up drowning. You won't get away with it. I've gotten away with it 8 times before." Patricia laughed. "Gabriel goes first, potassium chloride straight to the heart. Then we throw him in the pool. You'll try to save him and, well, accidents happen." Dr. Williams prepared a second syringe. "This one's for you, Mark. It'll make you pass out. When you wake up, you'll be in the water dying with your little boy." It was then that Gabriel did something no one expected. "Now, Dad!" And he threw himself into the pool. For a moment, Patricia and Dr. Williams were confused, expecting Gabriel to sink. But he floated perfectly, protected by the disguised life jacket. "What the hell?" Dr. Williams screamed. That's when the doors of the cottage burst open and the police stormed the property. "Police!" Hands in the air. Patricia looked around with wild eyes. "This is impossible. How did you—" "We knew everything," Mark said, pulling Gabriel out of the pool. "Mary's letters, your previous husbands, the children, everything." Dr. Williams tried to run, but was tackled by 2 officers before he could reach the woods. Patricia, however, didn't give up. With a scream of fury, she lunged at Gabriel with the syringe in her hand. Mark threw himself in front of his son, feeling the needle pierce his shoulder. "Dad!" Gabriel screamed, but before Patricia could inject the poison, she was tackled and immobilized by the officers. Mark, are you okay?" Sergeant Miller appeared beside him. "I'm fine. Gabriel, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad. You were so brave." Mark hugged his son, finally allowing himself to cry. "We did it, son. The mean lady will never hurt anyone again." Patricia was dragged toward the police car, screaming obscenities and threats. "This isn't over, Mark. I'm getting out and I'm going to find you both." "No," Sergeant Miller said calmly. "You're not." And for the first time in months, Gabriel smiled a genuine smile. The nightmare was over. 6 months later, the Kings County Criminal Court was packed for the most watched trial of the year. Mark held Gabriel's hand, now 7 years old and much stronger, as they watched Patricia Miller being escorted to the defendant's chair. She looked different. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her face pale. Her blue eyes that once seemed charming now revealed the coldness of a predator. "Dad, she looks scared," Gabriel whispered. "Bad people always get scared when they have to pay for what they've done," Mark replied. Judge Anthony Davis, known for his strictness in homicide cases, presided over the trial. The prosecutor, Ms. Eleanor Vance, had built a solid case with devastating evidence. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "Patricia Miller is a serial killer who operated for over a decade, systematically murdering husbands and stepchildren to steal inheritances. The defense, led by Mr. Michael Reed, tried to plead mental insanity. My client suffers from a severe dissociative disorder," he argued. "She was not fully aware of her actions." That's when Dr. Paul Williams was called to testify. Thin and gaunt after months in prison, he took the stand with trembling hands. "Dr. Williams," the prosecutor said, "you have a plea bargain. Can you tell us about your partnership with the defendant?" "Patricia approached me 5 years ago." His voice was almost a whisper. "She offered me money to falsify death certificates." "How many certificates did you falsify?" 9. 9 deaths she caused. And were you aware of her methods? Yes, she specialized in making deaths look natural, induced heart attacks, accidental drownings, falls. Gabriel squeezed his father's hand when Dr. Williams mentioned the falls. Can you specify how she induced heart attacks? Potassium chloride injected directly into the heart. In high doses, it mimics a natural cardiac arrest. And the children? Dr. Williams lowered his head. She said children were problematic witnesses. She always eliminated the stepchildren a few months after their fathers. How many children? 7, ages between 4 and 8. A murmur of horror swept through the courtroom. Dr. Williams, did the defendant show remorse for these crimes? No, she enjoyed it. She said it was a game, seeing how long she could keep up the facade before killing. When it was Patricia's turn to testify, she took the stand with a cold smile. Patricia Miller, the judge said, you are accused of 9 counts of first-degree murder and 7 counts of infanticide. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. Do you deny killing your first husband, Anthony Peterson? Anthony had a heart attack. I can't be blamed for his health issues. And his 5-year-old son, Peter Peterson, who died 3 months later. Allergic complications. A tragedy. Ms. Miller, the prosecutor interrupted, we have recordings of you confessing to the crimes. Recordings can be edited. We have Dr. Williams' testimony. A desperate man making up stories to reduce his sentence. And the physical evidence? The fake medications found in your possession. I don't know how they got there, Gabriel whispered to Mark. Dad, why does she keep lying? Because liars never stop lying, son. But the truth always wins. When the evidence began to be presented, the case against Patricia became overwhelming. The recordings from the cottage were played. 9 families, Mark, 9 husbands, 7 children. All killed by my hands. The toxicology reports showing potassium chloride in the victim's blood, the fake documents she used to get close to families, the insurance policies she made the husbands sign, Sergeant Miller's testimony about Mary's investigation, and finally Gabriel was called to testify. Gabriel, the prosecutor said gently, can you tell us what Aunt Patricia did with your medicine? She switched it with candy, Gabriel said in a clear voice. And she said she was going to give me a special shot. Were you scared of her? Very. Grandma Mary said she was dangerous. And you told your dad? I tried, but she always made up excuses. Patricia watched Gabriel with cold eyes, showing no emotion. After 3 days of trial, the jury retired to deliberate. 2 hours later, they returned with the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Patricia showed no reaction. Judge Davis rose for the sentencing. Patricia Miller, for the crimes of 9 counts of first-degree murder and 7 counts of infanticide, with the aggravating factors of heinous motive, cruelty, and the victim's inability to defend themselves, I sentence you to 55 years in state prison, without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years. It's not over, Patricia said coldly. I still have appeals. Perhaps, the judge replied, but your victims will never have a chance to appeal their deaths. Dr. Williams received 35 years, but with eligibility for parole due to his cooperation. Outside the courthouse, Mark hugged Gabriel. It's over, son. It's really over. Dad, the other children she killed, can they rest in peace now? Mark looked up at the blue sky of New York. Yes, Gabriel, they can. And for the first time since Julia's death, Mark felt that they could start over. Justice had been served. 2 years passed since the trial. Gabriel, now 9 years old, was in a therapy session with Dr. Anna Reynolds, a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma. How do you feel when someone mentions medicine, Gabriel? Better, Gabriel said, playing with a toy car. I still get a little nervous, but Dad always explains what each medicine is and what it's for. And about your new mum? Mark had married Marina, a gentle teacher Gabriel had met at school. Their relationship had grown slowly, with great care and transparency. Marina is nice. She never tries to give me medicine. She always calls Dad or Dr. Rodriguez. Do you feel like you can trust her? Yes, and she makes chocolate cake better than Grandma Mary did. Dr. Reynolds smiled. Gabriel's ability to form new emotional bonds had surprised all the professionals. Gabriel, do you still have nightmares? Sometimes. But now when I dream about the mean lady, Grandma Mary appears and sends her away. And how do you feel when you wake up? Protected. Because I know Dad, Marina, and Grandma Mary won't let anyone hurt me. In the waiting room, Mark was talking to Dr. Reynolds about his son's progress. Gabriel is an extraordinary child, she said. His resilience is impressive. He still stutters when he gets nervous. That's normal. Trauma leaves marks. But Gabriel is learning to live with them in a healthy way. And the medical distrust? That's also decreasing. Dr. Rodriguez's work was fundamental. Gabriel needs doctors who understand his history and are patient. Mark nodded. David had become Gabriel's exclusive doctor, establishing special protocols for appointments and medications. Dr. Reynolds, sometimes I wonder if I should have acted sooner. If I had paid more attention to the signs. Mark, you saved your son's life, and not just that, you prevented Patricia from killing other children. Gabriel sometimes talks about the other children she killed, as if he knew them. Children have their own ways of processing collective trauma. Gabriel understands that he wasn't the only one who suffered. Is that healthy? Very. It's developing empathy and a sense of justice. He wants to help other children. It was true. Gabriel had asked to visit shelters and orphanages, bringing toys and drawings. Mark initially resisted, but realized that helping others was healing Gabriel himself. He talked about creating something to help orphaned children, Mark said. The Julia and Mary Institute? You know about that. Gabriel told me. He wants to create a safe place for children who have lost their parents, especially through violence. Mark smiled. The idea had come from a conversation between father and son about how to honor the memory of Julia and Mary. We're looking for a location. Gabriel wants it to have a big garden with sunflowers. Why sunflowers? He says sunflowers always look toward the sun, even on cloudy days, just like he's learned to do. When Gabriel came out of the session, he was smiling. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course, son. I forgave Aunt Patricia. Mark stopped walking. What do you mean? Dr. Reynolds explained that holding on to anger is bad for your heart, and I don't want my heart to get sick. Gabriel, you don't have to forgive her. I know, but I want to. It doesn't mean what she did was right. It means I'm not going to let her meanness hurt me. Mark knelt down to his son's level. You are wiser than many adults. Grandma Mary taught me. She appeared in my dream and said that forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. And what about the other children? They forgave her too, and they're happy that we stopped the mean lady from hurting more children. Mark hugged Gabriel, feeling pride and love overflowing in his chest. Son, do you really want to create the institute? I do. So no child has to be alone and scared. Then let's make it happen. That night, Mark talked to Marina about Gabriel's plans. Size special, she said, caressing her belly where their first child was growing. This baby is going to have an incredible older brother. You're not bothered by the past? Mark, your past created a brave and compassionate boy. There's nothing for me to be bothered by. What if she manages to get out of prison? She won't. And if she does, we'll be ready. Mark looked out the window at the backyard, where Gabriel had planted sunflowers in the exact spot where he had found Mary's letters in the trash. The flowers were growing tall and strong, always turned toward the sun, just like Gabriel, just like all of them. 3 years after the trial, Gabriel, now 10, was in a room at the courthouse, giving a deposition about the new appeal Patricia had filed. Gabriel, said the judge handling the review, can you tell us again what happened that day at the cottage? Gabriel, taller and more mature, but still with the same sincere green eyes, answered in a clear voice. Aunt Patricia confessed that she had killed 9 husbands and 7 children. She said she was going to kill me with a shot and then drown my dad. And you are sure of what you heard? Yes, sir. She said she was tired of pretending to like me and Dad. Gabriel, the defense attorney interrupted, don't you think you might be confusing your memory? After all, you were very young. Gabriel looked directly at the lawyer. Sir, I remember what I had for breakfast 3 days ago. I remember the color of the shirt my teacher wore on Monday. I remember all the children who came to the institute this month. Why would I forget the most important day of my life? Mark felt proud of his son. Gabriel had developed a quiet confidence that impressed adults. But children can create false memories. They can, Gabriel agreed. That's why I brought this. Gabriel took a small notebook from his backpack. What is that? The judge asked. My journal. I started writing it right after Aunt Patricia was arrested. Dr. Reynolds said writing would help me process the memories. Gabriel opened a marked page. Here's what I wrote 3 days after the cottage. The mean lady said she killed 9 dads and 7 kids. She said she was going to give me a shot in my heart. Dad saved me. The police arrested her. I'm not scared anymore. The defense attorney looked rattled. Gabriel, the judge said, do you hold a grudge against Patricia? No, sir. Why not? Because holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Aunt Patricia is already paying for what she did. I choose to be happy. Even knowing what she planned to do to you? Gabriel thought carefully before answering. Sir, At the institute, there's a girl named Carla. Her parents died in an accident caused by a drunk driver. She asked me if she should hate the driver forever. And what did you say? I said she could choose. She could spend her whole life hating, or she could use her pain to help other people. She chose to help. Now she talks in schools about the dangers of drunk driving. And does that apply to your case? Yes, I can hate Aunt Patricia forever, or I can use what I learned to protect other children. The judge took notes. Gabriel, do you believe Patricia should remain in prison? I believe she should stay where she can't hurt anyone else. And what if she truly repents? Gabriel was silent for a long moment. Sir, true repentance would be her helping the police find other victims. It would be her telling the truth about all her crimes. It would be her using her time in prison to try to understand why she became mean. Has she done any of that? No, sir. She just keeps making up excuses and lying. After the testimony, Mark talked to Gabriel in the hallway. How do you feel? Good. It's important for justice to work properly. Weren't you nervous? A little. But then I remembered all the kids at the institute who are counting on me to be strong. Gabriel, there's something I never asked you. What, Dad? Do you have nightmares about Patricia? Not anymore. Now when I dream about her, it's different. How so? I dream that she's in a small dark cell all alone, and I feel sorry for her. Mark stopped walking. Sorry? Yeah. I imagine what it must be like to live without love, without family, without true friends. It must be very sad. Gabriel, she chose that path. I know. But it's still sad. No one is born wanting to be bad, Dad. Something happened that made her that way. That doesn't excuse what she did. Of course not. But it makes me understand that bad people aren't happy. They just spread their unhappiness. Mark hugged his son. You continue to surprise me. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes I pray for Aunt Patricia. You pray. I ask God to help her understand the wrong she did, not so she can get out of prison, but so she can stop suffering inside. Gabriel, you don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. Because when we pray for bad people, we become better too. 2 weeks later, Patricia's appeal was denied. She would remain in prison for at least the next 15 years. When they heard the news, Gabriel was helping a new child at the institute, a 7-year-old boy whose parents died in a robbery attempt. Gabriel, Mark said, the appeal was denied. That's good. Other children are safe. How do you feel? Gabriel looked at the boy who was drawing a family. Relieved, but mostly happy because I can keep helping here. Son, are you sure you want to dedicate your life to this? I am, Dad. You know why? Why? Because I discovered that the best way to heal our own wounds is to help heal the wounds of others. Mark watched Gabriel kneel beside the boy, helping him draw. What's your mom's name? Gabriel asked. Rose, the boy whispered. That's a beautiful name. Should we draw a big rose in the picture? The boy smiled for the first time since he had arrived at the institute, and Mark understood that Gabriel wasn't just overcoming his trauma, he was transforming it into purpose. 10 years after the trial, Gabriel turned 18 on the same day he graduated from high school. The party was at the Julia and Mary Institute, surrounded by the 43 children who now called the place home. Speech! Speech! The children chanted. Gabriel climbed onto a chair, smiling at the small crowd. Mark watched from the back of the room, next to Marina and their 6-year-old twins, John and Mary, named in honor of the great-grandmother. Everyone, Gabriel began, today is a special day, not just because I'm turning 18, but because I've accomplished something I never imagined. What? Sophia, now 15 and a volunteer at the Institute, shouted, I've proven that we're not victims forever. We're survivors who become victors. Applause filled the room. When I was 6, a very bad person wanted to hurt me. She wanted me to die, scared and alone. Gabriel looked at the children, all paying attention. But you know what happened? I didn't die. I wasn't scared forever, and I wasn't alone. Why not? Lucas, now a teenager, asked. Because I learned that when we go through bad things, we have 2 choices. Let the meanness destroy us, or use our pain to create something good. Gabriel pointed to the garden where the sunflowers grew tall. See those sunflowers? They grew in the place where I cried, looking for letters in the trash. The ground was wet with my tears, but instead of becoming barren, it became fertile. How so? Anna Paula asked. Our tears can water flowers, or they can water thorns. It depends on what we choose to plant. Mark felt his eyes well up. Gabriel had become exactly the man Julia had dreamed he would be. And you know what else? Gabriel continued. The bad person who wanted to hurt me is in a small, sad prison. But I'm here, free, surrounded by people I love. Who do you think won? You! All the children shouted. No, we won, because each one of you is proof that love conquers hate. Robert, now 17, stood up. Gabriel, are you going away to college? I'm going to study psychology at NYU, but I'll still come here every weekend. And after college? After, I'll come back to work here as the official psychologist of the institute. The children applauded enthusiastically. Later, when the party was over, Gabriel talked to Mark in the garden. Dad, can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you ever regret saving me? Mark stopped walking, shocked. Gabriel, what kind of question is that? I just sometimes think your life would have been simpler if I hadn't gone through all this. You wouldn't have to carry this burden. Mark knelt down in front of his son, now taller than him. Gabriel Thompson, listen to me carefully. Saving you was the most important thing I've ever done in my life. Not out of a father's obligation, but because you have become an extraordinary man, even with all the trauma, especially because of the trauma. Gabriel, you could have become a bitter, hateful person. Instead, you became someone who heals people. Gabriel smiled. You know what I discovered, Dad? What? Trauma doesn't define who we are. It defines who we choose to become. And who did you choose to become? Someone who transforms pain into hope, fear into courage, tears into flowers. Mark hugged his son. Your mum and your grandma would be proud. They are, Dad. I can feel it. Gabriel, there's something I never told you. What? The day I found you looking for the letters in the trash, I had a terrible premonition, as if I knew our lives were going to change forever. And you regret it? Never, because in that moment, looking at you crying, I understood what my purpose in life was. What? To protect you, and to help you become who God wanted you to be. Gabriel was silent, watching the sunflowers sway in the night breeze. Dad, when I was little, I was scared that Aunt Patricia would come back. And now I know that even if she came back, she couldn't hurt me, because I learned that bad people only have power over those who believe they are stronger. And you're stronger. I am, not because of muscles or age. I'm stronger because I chose love. Mark looked at his son, now a man, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gabriel, do you have plans for after you graduate? I do. I want to expand the institute, create a national network for orphaned children. And a family? Kids? Gabriel smiled mysteriously. I already have a family. I have you, Marina, John, Mary, and 43 siblings here at the institute. But a wife? Biological children? Maybe one day. But first I need to be sure I can give them the same love you gave me. Gabriel, you're going to be an extraordinary father. How do you know? Because you're already a father to 43 children. Gabriel looked at the house where the children were sleeping peacefully. You know what's the most incredible thing, Dad? What? Every child we help heals a piece of my own pain. It's like God is using my experience to multiply healing. Do you believe everything happened for a reason? Gabriel thought for a long time. I believe God didn't cause the bad thing that happened to me, but He used my choice to do good to transform the bad into a blessing. And Patricia? She made bad choices and she's paying for them. But even her bad choices were used for good. How so? If she hadn't tried to kill me, I never would have learned that I'm stronger than I imagined, and other children would never have been saved because she was arrested. Mark shook his head, impressed by his son's wisdom. Gabriel, did you truly forgive her? I did, Dad. Not because she deserves it, but because I deserve to live free from hatred. And that night, under the starry sky of New York, father and son stayed in the garden until late, surrounded by the sunflowers that had grown from pain and bloomed into hope. The journey that had started with tears had transformed into a symphony of healing, and Gabriel knew it was only the beginning. 10 years later, Dr. Gabriel Thompson, now 28, and with a freshly earned doctorate in psychology from NYU, walked through the garden of the Julia and Mary Institute on a spring morning. The place had grown. It was now 3 interconnected buildings, housing over 100 children and teenagers. Dr. Gabriel, a child's voice called out. Peter, 8 years old, ran toward him holding a drawing. The boy had arrived at the institute 3 months earlier, traumatized after witnessing the death of his parents in an accident. What did you draw, Peter? A new family. Miss Marina said I can dream about a family that will adopt me. Gabriel knelt to get on the boy's level. And what does this family look like? With a mom who bakes cakes and a dad who tells stories, and maybe a dog. That sounds like a wonderful family. Doctor. Gabriel, can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you still miss your mom? Gabriel looked at the statue of Julia and Mary that had been erected in the center of the garden. I do, Peter. Every day. But you're not sad. I am sometimes. But I learned that missing someone is proof that we loved them very much. And that's a good thing? It's the best thing in the world. Peter smiled and ran back to play. Gabriel continued walking until he reached his office. He was now the psychological director of the institute. On his desk, a letter was waiting for him. The sender made his heart race. Bedford Hills, Correctional Facility for Women. Patricia had written to him. With a steady hand, Gabriel opened the envelope. Gabriel, I know you weren't expecting this letter. I wasn't expecting to write it either. After 15 years in prison, I finally understand what I did. Not just the crimes, I always knew that, but the harm I caused to innocent souls. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it. I'm just acknowledging the truth. You won. That 6-year-old boy I wanted to destroy has become a man who saves lives. While I rot in a cell, you are blooming in the world. I heard about the institute, the children you help, the life you've built. You did something I never could. You transformed pain into love. Don't reply to this letter. I don't want to contaminate your peace. I just wanted you to know. Your forgiveness freed me from a hatred I didn't even know I was carrying against myself. Patricia. Gabriel folded the letter carefully. After a few minutes, he took out a piece of paper and a pen. Patricia, I received your letter. Thank you for writing. You're right, I won. But I didn't win against you. I won against the fear, hatred, and despair you tried to plant in me. You can also win against those things. Even from prison, use the time you have to help other inmates. Tell your story to women who are starting down dangerous paths. Transform your experience into a warning. It's never too late to choose good. Gabriel. That afternoon, Gabriel was in his therapy session with Dr. Reynolds, now his colleague and mentor. How do you feel after receiving the letter? At peace. She finally acknowledged the truth. And does that change anything for you? It confirms that forgiveness was the right choice, not for her, but for me. Gabriel, do you realize how much you've grown since that 6-year-old boy? I do, but I also realize that that boy still lives inside me. Gabriel touched his chest. He reminds me of where I came from and motivates me to keep going. And the plans for the future. Gabriel smiled. Anna, there's something I haven't told you. What? I'm getting married. Dr. Reynolds' eyes widened. Gabriel, to who? Remember Carla? The girl who lost her parents in the drunk driving accident? The one who became a speaker. Her. We reconnected in college. She graduated with a law degree and now advocates for victims of traffic accidents. How wonderful. When's the wedding? Next year, right here in the Institute garden, surrounded by the sunflowers and the children. And do you want children? Gabriel looked out the window at the children playing. We already have children, over 100. But yes, we want biological children too. How will you balance everything? The same way my dad did, with a lot of love and a lot of patience. That night, Gabriel had dinner at home with his family. Mark, now 55 with graying hair, watched his son with pride. Gabriel, your mum called today. Marina? No, Carla, she said they've already chosen the godparents. Oh yeah, you and Marina and Sophia and Robert. All from the Institute family, Marina commented, smiling. The only family that matters, Gabriel said. John and Mary, now 16, exchanged looks. Gabriel, Mary said, can we tell you something? Of course. We've both decided we want to work at the Institute too. Seriously? John wants to be a pediatric doctor, and I want to be a social worker. Gabriel's eyes welled up. Are you sure? We are, John said. We grew up watching you help kids. We want to be a part of that. Mark placed a hand on Gabriel's shoulder. Son, you've created a legacy. It wasn't me, Dad. It was the love you planted in me. After dinner, Gabriel went to the garden for his nightly walk, a ritual he had kept since he was a child. In the spot where he had once sifted through trash looking for Mary's letters, the largest sunflower in the garden now grew. Gabriel sat in its shade and looked at the stars. Mom, Grandma, he whispered, we did it. Evil didn't win. A gentle breeze rustled the sunflowers as if they were answering. Gabriel took a small notebook from his pocket, the same journal he had kept since he was 8. On the last page he wrote, Today marks 22 years since the day I found the letters in the trash. Today, I also received a very different letter from someone who tried to destroy me, but who finally acknowledged that love won. I learned that scars are not signs of weakness, but proof of survival, that tears can water flowers. That forgiveness is not about accepting evil, but choosing not to be poisoned by it. Tomorrow I'm going to start writing a book telling our story, not to relive the pain, but to show that it's possible to transform it into purpose. The title will be Sunflowers in the Darkness, How a Child Survived Evil and Chose Good. Because that's what we all are, sunflowers that grow even in the darkness, always searching for the light, and the light always wins. Gabriel closed the notebook and stood up. Tomorrow would be a new day, full of children to help, hearts to heal, hope to plant. As he walked back to the house, the sunflowers swayed gently in the wind, like golden sentinels protecting dreams and guarding the promise that, no matter how dark the night, the sun always rises again. And Gabriel knew that his journey was just beginning, because he had discovered the most important truth of all. Love is stronger than hate, hope is stronger than despair, and a life dedicated to healing others is the most beautiful revenge against those who tried to destroy us. In the garden where there were once tears, flowers now grew, and those flowers would continue to bloom forever.